That's one thing about nature. It doesn't wait for anybody. But this is the perfect spot that I chose for the greenhouse. The winter sun just tracks right across there.
Yeah.
Eustace Conway has always lived life on the edge of civilization, immersed in the wilderness, surviving off the land and embracing a life far removed from modern comfort. But nothing prepared anyone for what was discovered in the loft of his barn. For years, Conway's barn had been a functional space, storing tools, supplies, and remnants of a rugged, self-sufficient lifestyle. Fans of mountain men had often seen him work in and around it, yet few suspected that its upper loft concealed secrets so extraordinary that they would leave friends, family, and even longtime collaborators completely speechless inside that dusty, forgotten space. Layers of mystery and history had accumulated over decades. Objects were stacked, hidden, and preserved in ways that suggested deliberate concealment. Some items were practical equipment for survival and wilderness living, but others hinted at personal stories, historical connections, and activities that had never been shared publicly. The discovery immediately sparked questions. What had Conway been keeping hidden? Why had he chosen this secluded loft to store these items? And most importantly, what do these artifacts reveal about the man who has captivated audiences with his rugged independence and knowledge of the natural world? What they found in that barn loft challenges everything fans thought they knew about Eustace Conway. The items tell a story that is equal parts astonishing, inspiring, and deeply mysterious, a story that offers a rare glimpse into the private life of a man whose public persona has always been larger than life. This is a story of discovery, secrets, and revelations that are as shocking as they are unforgettable. Eustace Conway's life has long been defined by his connection to the wilderness and his commitment to living deliberately off the grid. From his early days exploring the forests to his years as a public figure on Mountain Men, Conway's reputation as a survivalist and outdoorsman is well known. Yet behind the scenes, there was one part of his property that remained largely unexplored: the loft of his barn. For decades, the barn loft had been a storage space for tools, supplies, and various materials necessary for daily life in a self-sufficient homestead. Over time, however, it became more than just a practical area. It transformed into a hidden archive of Conway's life. Objects were stacked, labeled, and sometimes deliberately hidden, creating an atmosphere of secrecy that only those closest to him had ever sensed. When family members and close associates were finally given permission to explore the loft, they were struck immediately by the sheer volume of items. Wooden crates, metal trunks, and stacks of weathered boxes were scattered across the space, many carefully labeled and others mysteriously unmarked. It was immediately clear that Conway had been accumulating these possessions over decades, and that many were deliberately kept out of sight. Among the first items discovered were tools and equipment reflecting his life as a survivalist. Old traps, handcrafted knives, and materials for fire-making and shelter construction were meticulously preserved. These were not mere artifacts of daily life, they were practical items maintained with care, reflecting Conway's skill and foresight in living off the land. But as the exploration continued, the discoveries became far more unusual. Hidden compartments revealed journals filled with detailed observations about wildlife, weather patterns, and survival techniques. Some notebooks contained sketches of intricate tools and devices that were experimental in nature, suggesting a level of ingenuity and planning beyond what fans of the show had imagined. Each page reflected a mind constantly engaged in observation, analysis, and preparation. The loft also contained personal items, some of which were deeply intimate: letters to friends and family, personal mementos, and objects collected from travels and wilderness excursions painted a vivid picture of a man whose life was rich with experiences that rarely made it to television. These objects added a human dimension to Conway's rugged persona, revealing vulnerability, reflection, and a profound attachment to both people and place. Perhaps most shocking were a handful of artifacts whose purpose and origin were mysterious. Some appeared historical, possibly relics from past centuries, while others were handmade items that seemed to combine practicality with creativity. The presence of these artifacts raised more questions than answers. Had Conway discovered them During his time in the wilderness, were they part of a personal collection, or did they hold symbolic significance known only to him? Every corner of the barn loft seemed to hold another secret, another story waiting to be discovered. The space, once assumed to be a simple storage area, turned out to be a carefully curated repository of knowledge, memory, and ingenuity. It became clear that Conway's public persona, though extraordinary, was only a fraction of the life he had lived and the secrets he had kept. By the time the team completed their initial survey, it was evident that the loft was more than a storage space. It was a testament to Conway's meticulous nature, his intellect, and his passion for survival and discovery. What was found in that loft would leave anyone speechless, offering insights into the complexity of a man who has always seemed larger than life. The deeper the team explored Eustace Conway's barn loft, the more astonishing the discoveries became. What initially appeared to be a collection of survival tools and old equipment soon revealed layers of secrets, personal history, and items so unusual that even seasoned investigators were left speechless. Among the first shocking finds were several crates filled with rare and unusual artifacts. Some appeared historical weathered tools, old hunting equipment, and objects that might have belonged to settlers from centuries past. Others were mysterious handmade items, crafted with precision, yet defying conventional explanation. These artifacts hinted at experiences and knowledge far beyond what was publicly known about Conway. Questions quickly rose. Had he collected these items intentionally, or were they remnants of forgotten adventures in the wilderness? The loft also contained stacks of journals and notebooks, meticulously labeled and organized. Inside were detailed sketches, experimental designs, and notes on survival techniques that were both practical and ingenious. Some pages documented advanced mechanical contraptions, tools designed to solve specific survival challenges, and even methods for harvesting and preserving natural resources that went far beyond conventional knowledge. These notebooks revealed Conway's intellect, curiosity, and meticulous planning in ways the public had never seen. Perhaps the most unsettling discoveries were the personal letters and reflections. Tucked away in locked boxes and hidden compartments, they detailed Conway's private thoughts, fears, and experiences. Some entries referenced challenges he had faced in wilderness expeditions, moments of personal struggle, and reflections on life, morality, and legacy. These writings offered a glimpse into the vulnerability of a man whose public image is defined by toughness and self-reliance. They revealed that behind the rugged exterior was someone deeply contemplative and profoundly human. Among the most mysterious items were experimental tools and contraptions that defied simple explanation. Some appeared to be hybrids of traditional survival tools with innovative designs, suggesting that Conway was continually testing and perfecting methods to survive and thrive in extreme conditions. Each piece, carefully preserved, showed ingenuity and foresight, reflecting a mind constantly engaged in problem-solving and preparation. Hidden compartments contained smaller, more personal artifacts, photographs, trinkets, and objects from travels and wilderness excursions that revealed layers of his private life. Each item carried significance, serving as a reminder of experiences, relationships, or lessons learned. These artifacts were more than mere possessions. They were tangible connections to a life that existed largely out of the public eye. Family members and investigators noted that the loft was organized with deliberate care. While at first glance it appeared cluttered, there was a clear system known only to Conway. Items were stored in ways that suggested strategic thinking and meticulous attention to detail. The loft was not simply storage, it was an archive, a laboratory, and a personal museum all at once. The combination of practical tools, personal artifacts, and historical items painted a complex portrait of Eustace Conway. It was evident that the man who had fascinated television audiences for years possessed layers of depth and complexity that went far beyond his public persona. His barn loft was a microcosm of his life, innovative, secretive, and carefully curated. By the end of the exploration, it was clear that Conway's barn loft was one of the most significant discoveries. For those seeking to understand the man behind the legend, the space, full of hidden artifacts and documents, was a testament to his intellect, creativity, and private life. Every item uncovered added nuance to the story of a man who has always lived on the edge of society, yet with a depth of planning and reflection that few could have imagined. The discoveries left everyone speechless, not just because of the rarity of the items, but because of what they revealed about Eustace Conway himself. He was not only a survivalist or a television personality. He was a meticulous archivist of his own life, preserving memories, experiments, and secrets that spoke to a larger story about human curiosity, ingenuity, and resilience. As the exploration of Eustace Conway's barn loft progressed, it became increasingly. One of the most startling finds was a series of crates filled with artifacts whose origins and purposes were difficult to determine. Some were clearly historical, weathered hunting tools, fragments of old machinery, and objects that appeared to date back decades or even centuries. Others were unusual handmade devices whose function was obscure. Experts suggested some might have been prototypes of survival tools, while others could have been cultural relics collected during Conway's extensive travels. Their presence raised questions. Had Conway stumbled upon these items in his wilderness excursions, or had he collected them with intention and purpose? Even more surprising were the notebooks and journals hidden in corners and under floorboards. Inside were detailed sketches of experimental devices, traps, and wilderness contraptions that defied conventional design. Some sketches included mechanisms for water collection, food preservation, and shelter construction, all with unique innovations that could only have come from someone with decades of hands-on experience. It became clear that Conway's creative mind was constantly thinking, testing, and refining new survival strategies. Amid the practical discoveries were deeply personal and, at times, unsettling items. Letters to family, notes to himself, and reflective journal entries revealed aspects of Conway's inner life that contrasted sharply with his public persona. Some passages were deeply vulnerable, detailing fears, regrets, and philosophical musings about life, mortality, and purpose. Others described extraordinary experiences in the wild, encounters with rare animals, and challenges faced in isolation, events that had never been mentioned in public or on television. These writings revealed a man who was as introspective as he was adventurous, whose mind was as keen as his hands. The most mysterious items were those that seemed deliberately concealed: small locked boxes, hidden compartments, and artifacts tucked into places only Conway would have known. Within these were unusual object-sold coins, handcrafted tools, and even fragments of maps that hinted at journeys and discoveries unknown to anyone outside his inner circle. Some items appeared to carry symbolic meaning, possibly representing milestones in his life or lessons learned in the wilderness. Each concealed artifact reinforced the sense that Conway had created a private archive, preserving his experiences and knowledge for reasons only he fully understood. Investigators also noted experimental tools that blended traditional craftsmanship with inventive engineering. Some devices appeared to be hybrids of traps and mechanical tools, possibly designed to improve survival efficiency or adapt to extreme conditions. The level of detail in the accompanying sketches and notes suggested meticulous planning and an obsessive attention to precision. This was not merely a hobbyist's workshop, it was the creation of a mind, entirely consumed with problem-solving, experimentation, and preparation. Family members were particularly struck by how the loft served as both a functional workspace and a personal time capsule. Photographs, keepsakes, and mementos lined the shelves, each telling a story of experiences, achievements, and personal reflections. Every object seemed carefully chosen, preserved, and stored with intention, demonstrating Conway's commitment to documenting both practical survival techniques and personal memories. By the end of the initial exploration, the loft had revealed itself as a window into Conway's complex life, a life of ingenuity, secrecy, and extraordinary skill. It showed that the man who had captivated television audiences was far more intricate, private, and brilliant than most could have imagined. The items uncovered were not only rare and valuable, but also profoundly telling, offering insight into a man who had lived deliberately, thoughtfully, and with unwavering dedication to understanding the world around him. The shocking discoveries left everyone speechless, not only because of the rarity of the objects, but because they revealed the true depth of Eustace Conway's character. a visionary, an inventor, and a man whose life was far more layered than the public could ever see. The barn loft was no longer just storage. It was a testament to a life lived boldly and thoughtfully, with secrets that would continue to captivate those lucky enough to witness them. As the exploration of Eustace Conway's barn loft continued, the discoveries reached a level that left everyone involved in awe and, in some cases, stunned. What had begun as an inventory of old tools and supplies quickly became an excavation of secrets, memories, and innovations that few could have predicted. Each item uncovered seemed to tell a story, shedding light on aspects of Conway's life that had remained completely hidden from public view. One of the most extraordinary discoveries was a series of locked crates containing artifacts whose origins and purposes defied immediate explanation. Some were unmistakably historical, antique hunting implements, early survival tools, and objects that appeared to predate Conway's own lifetime. Others were highly unusual, handmade devices that blended ingenuity with practicality, seemingly designed for extreme survival scenarios or experimental wilderness techniques. Experts who examined these items were left questioning their purpose and provenance, acknowledging that some could have been found during decades of remote wilderness exploration. Even more astonishing were notebooks and journals, hidden carefully beneath loose boards and behind stacks of crates. Inside were detailed diagrams and instructions for contraptions and survival devices that Conway had meticulously developed. Some devices were entirely functional, intended to improve efficiency in the wilderness. Others seemed experimental hybrid inventions that combined mechanics, natural materials, and survival knowledge in ways that bordered on genius. These writings and sketches revealed a mind constantly thinking, planning, and innovating, far beyond the capabilities seen on television. The loft also contained intensely personal artifacts that shed light on Conway's inner life. Letters to friends and family, along with reflective journal entries, revealed vulnerabilities and experiences rarely associated with the public image of a fearless survivalist. Some writings recounted dangerous wilderness encounters, personal regrets, or moral dilemmas. Others were philosophical musings on life, mortality, and the lessons of living deliberately. It became clear that behind the rugged exterior was a deeply thoughtful, introspective individual whose experiences had shaped a complex worldview. Perhaps the most controversial finds were small, deliberately hidden artifacts, old coins, fragments of maps, and objects that hinted at secret journeys or experiences never shared publicly. These items suggested that Conway's adventures were far more expansive and mysterious than anyone had realized. Some were symbolic, perhaps memorializing important events or lessons, while others seemed purely practical. Their careful concealment indicated that Conway intended them to remain private, accessible only to those he trusted or, perhaps, only to himself. Investigators were particularly struck by the loft's combination of creativity and meticulous organization. While it appeared cluttered at first glance, there was a clear system to Conway's storage. Everything had a purpose, location, and significance. This revealed a level of discipline, foresight, and intentionality that contrasted with the chaotic image of a survivalist living spontaneously in the wild. The loft was simultaneously a laboratory, an archive, and a personal museum, a reflection of Conway's multifaceted life. Family members noted that some items were more than practical tools or mementos. They were tangible representations of lessons learned, challenges overcome, and a life lived fully on his own terms. Each discovery added nuance to the story of a man whose public persona, though extraordinary, was only a fragment of who he truly was. By the time the loft was fully explored, the shocking truth was undeniable. Eustace Conway's barn loft was a treasure trove of ingenuity, history, and personal reflection. It revealed a man of unparalleled creativity, meticulous planning, and profound depth. The discoveries challenged conventional assumptions about him, illustrating that his life was not just about survival, but about documenting, preserving, and understanding the world in a uniquely personal way. Ultimately, what they found in the barn loft left everyone speechless, not merely for the rarity or value of the objects, but for what they revealed about Eustace Conway himself, a visionary, a thinker, and a man whose legacy is far richer, more mysterious, and more inspiring than anyone could have imagined. The loft, once thought to be ordinary storage, had become a window into the mind and soul of one of America's most extraordinary modern-day frontiersmen.